team lays it on the line for Louisiana every night. We didn't have the best circumstances today, but we found a way, and that's what we do in Louisiana. Boot up, baby!
The screen from Days works back to his left. Now decides to rise and shoot the three, and it's good from a good 24 plus. Huge dagger for Cam Thomas. Down to 12 seconds. St. Bonaventure as well, ready to call it a game and call it a season. An excellent year for Mark Smith. 7th appearance in the NCAA tournament, but it comes to an end today as the final seconds roll off the clock. Horn sounds, and the Tigers win to move on in NCAA action. 76-61 win. Coach Will Wade, a couple of fist pumps to the Tiger fans here in attendance.
Proud of our guys. I'm proud for everybody back in Louisiana, man. Louisiana strong. Boot up, guys.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a quickly turned around Boot Up, the LSU Basketball Podcast. I'm Cody Worsham, digital media reporter. Coming to you on Monday morning about, let's do the math here, 9 hours before LSU and Michigan tip off. But I wanted to get a podcast out before that game because you know what? It's March, and it's special that LSU gets to be in this spot playing for a second berth in the Sweet 16 in as many NCAA tournaments. And I want to start there. But before we talk about Cam Thomas and Aundre Hyatt, the win over St. Bonaventure, preview very quickly the game against Michigan tonight, I want to talk about the feeling that you're feeling right now as you're listening to this podcast. It's a special feeling, and it's one that I know personally that I haven't felt a ton in my life, specifically as it relates to LSU basketball. This is what makes March special. The hope you're feeling, the anticipation you're feeling, the excitement, the butterflies, the fact that you've been thinking about this game ever since the clock hit zero on Saturday against St. Bonaventure, and thinking about the potential of LSU winning and the matchups that could happen if they win, and the feeling that it would be to get in the Sweet 16 and the possibility of going even further beyond that. That's what March is all about. And for LSU basketball fans over the years, it hasn't necessarily been like that every year. It's been so inconsistent. I did the quick math after the game. This is just from 2007 to 2018. LSU made 2 NCAA tournament appearances and won a single game in the NCAA tournament. That's 12 seasons, if I'm doing the math right in my head, where only 2 of them you had this feeling. 10 of them you couldn't even relate to it. And it was similar before that too. Like, take out the 2006 Final Four run, and I'm not saying discount it. I'm just saying take it out of this particular equation. Take out the 1999 Sweet 16 run with Strohmeyer and Jabari. And LSU's March success has been limited since really the early 90s. Since that 1986 Final Four, LSU really hasn't made that kind of run in the NCAA tournament besides 2006, of course, and besides 1999. And those were so spaced out that you never got used to this feeling as an LSU basketball fan. You never got used to this kind of hope, this kind of anticipation, the possibilities that await in March. And that's what makes March special. And what's really cool about what's going on right now is this is becoming a regularly occurring event for LSU. Last year, they would have very much been in this kind of mix. They would have been an 8 or 9 seed last year if the tournament hadn't gotten canceled, and they would have had a chance to win the first game and play for the Sweet 16 in the second game. The year before that, the last time there was an NCAA tournament, this is where LSU was, playing for the Sweet 16. Tremont Waters' buzzer beater to advance into the Sweet 16. Those kinds of things stick with you forever, and the feeling and the hope and the excitement is great. But for LSU fans, it was always so rare, and now it's becoming regular, and that's really exciting. And that's a testament to Will Wade and his program building this kind of consistency. So sink into that feeling, sink into that moment, sink into today, regardless of the result. And look, I like LSU's chances and hope they win, obviously. But this feeling, this anticipation, even when you make the tournament and lose that first game, you don't really get that feeling, right? It feels like you just showed up and you didn't even have time to unpack your bags, and then you're heading back home. Winning that first game like LSU did against St. Bonaventure gives you this feeling that you get right now. So it's not necessarily just about making the tournament. It's about winning and sustaining success in the tournament, and that's what LSU's done. So kudos to Will Wade and his team for the consistency, and kudos to the win that they got against St. Bonaventure. I want to talk about that really quick before we talk about the Michigan matchup. LSU beat St. Bonaventure. Let me pull up my box score here. 79-61. A slow start. 76-61. I'm really bad with scores. Apologies. 76-61 in a game that started slow for LSU offensively, but they got it done defensively because, as we all expected, right, LSU was going to carry through March on the back of its defense. That's how it's going to be, apparently. But that's what LSU did against St. Bonaventure. The switching defense that LSU's employed all season really gave St. Bonaventure a screen-heavy, slow, set-based, deliberate offense. A lot of troubles because they couldn't create the angles, the spacing that they wanted in their screen game. And LSU was able to contest a bunch of shots, and LSU was able to, very, very importantly, rebound a bunch of misses. And as a result, they moved past St. Bonaventure. I want to highlight a couple standout individual performances based on that game and how I think they might project moving forward. And I'm not going to start in the obvious place. I'm going to start in a less obvious place, but probably a place that you would have guessed if you've listened to this podcast. I want to start with Darius Days. Darius Days had 13 points. I believe he finished with 11 rebounds, 12 rebounds. He had a double-double, whatever. Here, I got the box score here. 11 rebounds. So Darius Days had 13 points, 11 rebounds, stayed out of foul trouble for the most part, stayed in the game, stayed on the floor. And when LSU gets that kind of performance out of Days, they win. I think if he scores 11 points or more, that's the stat, right? LSU's undefeated this year. He got to 13, and LSU was able to win. So that was important. I think Trenton Watford also getting a double-double was huge, especially the 11 defensive rebounds. LSU grabbed 49 rebounds to St. Bonaventure's 30. That's just not something LSU's done all season, and they were able to do that thanks to Days and Watford, really doing the dirty work inside. Not their sexiest games, if you will, not their most highlight-studded games, but just really solid performances from both of them. Now we'll go to the obvious place, and we'll talk about Aundre Hyatt, who had his best game as an LSU Tiger, bar none, very obviously. Had 13 points, 10 rebounds, a couple of assists, 4 blocks, a steal, in 32 minutes. He was a game high, plus 16. Hyatt is such an interesting case for LSU because I think if you go back to the end of last season, there were people wondering if he would be back on the team this year, right? LSU fans were speculating he might not be back because they might recruit over him, and but he stuck around, and there's a reason that he stuck around, and you saw it Saturday. And it's not so much the double-double, which was great. It's not so much the 4 blocks, which was awesome. It's not so much the 7 offensive rebounds, which were fantastic. Hyatt gives you things, especially lately, since he's emerged back in the starting lineup since, after the Alabama loss. Hyatt's been back in the lineup. And LSU, since that time, is 8-3, and their only losses are to Alabama in the SEC tournament, to Arkansas on the road, and then that loss at Georgia. But since Hyatt's come back in, LSU's kind of the trajectory of their season has changed. They had lost 4 of 5 before that. They've heated up since then. They've played a lot better, and it's because of the things that Hyatt gives you intangibly. The tangibles were obvious on Saturday. Like I said, all the stats that stood out. But he is such a good fit when he's playing well, and he's been playing well lately. He's such a good fit with that big 4, with Trenton Watford, Javonte Smart, Cam Thomas, Darius Days. They're all high-usage players. They're all guys who need the ball in their hands to be successful, or like to. I shouldn't say that. They all play well off the ball, but they're guys that are high usage players, all of them. And so when you're looking for a 5th piece, you're looking for a complementary piece. You're looking for a guy that moves the ball, that plays with high IQ, that's in the right place, that can guard, that can knock down an open shot if he needs to. And Aundre Hyatt has done all of those things and more lately. Here's Will Wade talking about the performance of Aundre Hyatt against St. Bonaventure.
Yeah, I mean, what you saw today, that's what we see every day in practice, and he actually shoots it really, really well. But, I trust him. He's steady. You know where he's going to be, and this is why, as a coach, you stick with guys. We went away from him a little bit there in the middle of the year, but he earned that starting spot. It's not like we just, hand out starting spots like Halloween candy or something on Halloween. You show up and you get it. But, he had earned it. He had earned it in his preseason and how hard he worked. And, as a head coach, I trust that, and we trust that. And, he came up huge for us. He came up huge for us against Alabama. He came up huge for us in this game here, and that's why you stick with guys.
Since Hyatt was reintroduced in the starting lineup after that Alabama loss against Mississippi State on February 10th, I want to give you some numbers just to look at. When he's on the floor, LSU scores 117 points per 100 possessions. When he's off the floor, they score 107. So they're scoring 10 more points per possession, per 100 possessions when he's on the floor. Defensively, since that time frame, when Hyatt's on the floor, LSU gives up 103 points per 100 possessions. When he's off the floor, they give up 104. So in total, let's do the math. LSU's outscoring opponents by 14 points per 100 possessions when Hyatt is on the floor. That's the second highest figure of any player during that stretch. The high is actually Josh LeBlanc, who's played really well for LSU in that stretch too. He's at plus 21 when he's on the floor, and -1 when he's off the floor. But a credit to Hyatt, who since coming back in the lineup, and the differences are very evident. The contribution he's made. LSU's turning the ball over only 11% of the time when he's on the floor. I think very, very evident was the offensive rebounding on Saturday, that he gave you 7 offensive rebounds. They're getting about their offensive rebounding percentage is at 34% when he's on the floor. It's only 30% when he's off the floor. So he's making a real difference in the team. They're shooting 36% from 3 when he's on the floor, 34% when he's off. So everything's just a little bit better with Hyatt in there. He's been a glue guy. Looking forward to Michigan. I don't think Aundre Hyatt's going to get another double-double and add 4 blocks and a steal and post the stats that he did in the opening game, but I don't think he's going to need to. I think he's going to just need to be the ball mover, the high IQ player that's in the right spot that can switch defensively. I think he's still got an important role to play whether or not he scores. What I was most impressed with St. Bonaventure was his IQ was on display early on, and this is what teams have started doing with LSU. They're targeting the 5th guy, right? So whoever's on the floor with the big 4, they're targeting that guy and saying, you beat us, right? And in the SEC tournament, we saw it with Eric Gaines, where they just left Gaines. Arkansas did this a bunch, doubled the ball, and then rotated behind it. And Gaines did a pretty good job of finding space and making plays there. With Hyatt, it was more they were just sagging off of him, giving him a lot of space, crowding the paint, mucking it up, making the driving lanes hard for LSU. So LSU settled for a bunch of jump shots early. And then Hyatt figured it out. I think he took 1 or 2 jumpers early, missed them, and then he just started backing down in the paint. And he wasn't backing down in the paint to create his own shot necessarily, although a couple times he did, or he would miss it and go put it back in, getting those offensive rebounds. He was backing down in the paint to collapse the defense and kick it out. And that's when you started seeing other guys get space and make plays. And it's just a testament to his IQ. He figured it out on the fly. He didn't play into what the defense wanted to do. So many times when guys get in that spot, they just give into what the defense wants. Oh, they're sagging off me. I'm going to fire up a couple threes here and hope they go in. He didn't do that. He decided, look, this is what they're trying to take away. I'm going to go get it anyway. They're trying to take away the paint. I'm going to go get in the paint anyway. I'm going to go make an impact on the game in other places. And then after that, the shot started falling. He hit a big 3 and made a couple shots around the rim and got LSU going. And then from there, it was done. It was done and dusted. So credit to Hyatt for getting them going. The guy who really closed things off for LSU, though, was Cam Thomas. And it's no surprise. I've talked about Cam time and time again, how I think he's built for this time of year, and then he goes out there in the first half and shoots 1 of 8, and I'm kind of looking at myself like, man, that was a really dumb take. Apparently, you were overhyped what this kid was going to do in March, and lo and behold, as soon as I doubted him, Cam Thomas exploded, and especially in the second half, 20 points, 6 of 10 shooting from the field, 2 of 4 from 3. I don't have the free. I think it was 6 of 7 from the line in the second half. Electric, dynamic, hit the big threes, did everything that you would want to. I mean, anytime you're scoring 20 points in the second half on 10 shots, you're doing it efficiently. He played 39 minutes. He was plus 16 to match Hyatt for the best individual plus-minus in the game. And what I thought Cam did best of probably any game this season was his shot wasn't falling, and he started attacking the rim, but he was attacking the rim as a playmaker. He finished with 3 assists to match the team high. Just 1 turnover. LSU put him in the pick and roll, and he was driving and dishing. And in addition to those 3 assists, he probably had 3 or 4 where he passed and a guy got fouled and went to the free throw line. So it's 3 assists on the stat sheet, but he probably created opportunities for others twice that many times, if not more. There was a great stat, I think, in the second half where Cam had assisted or scored on like 13 of LSU's 15 points. He's the kind of guy that can take over a game. Whether he does it, and the number that I keep throwing out there is he hasn't gone 8 of 10 from 3 yet this year, and maybe he's due for that. Maybe not. Maybe because he takes so many tough threes, he's not going to have an 8 of 10 from 3 kind of game against Michigan. But he can take over a game, which is exactly what he did against St. Bonaventure. I hope he can do it against Michigan too. That's the kind of guy that gets you in March. That's the kind of guy that gets you through March. Is you have the role player that steps up. Aundre Hyatt did it. You have all your guys do what they normally do. LSU had that for the most part against St. Bonaventure. And then you have the takeover guy take over. That's exactly what Cam Thomas did. Really, really exciting to see him step into that role, take over a game like he's capable of doing, be a March star. March stars, we always remember them. They always stand out to us in history. LSU's had those guys in the past, kind of. It's been more, Jabari Smith and Stromile Swift in 99 were kind of that In 2006, Daryl Mitchell had some big games. Glenn Davis had some big games, but those were all kind of collective efforts, and this will be the same. If LSU is going to make a run this year, it'll be a collective effort. But they haven't had the guy of the pedigree of Cam Thomas putting up the big numbers, carrying them through March offensively. And I'll be interested to see how Cam plays against Michigan, and if he can replicate some of that and do that electric stuff that that gets the announcers going, it gets all eyes on the game. It leads. I guess it doesn't lead SportsCenter because they can't play the highlights on SportsCenter, but it's sort of those singular performances that you talk about, and that's what makes LSU dangerous, is because they can beat you with the collective team effort like they've done in the past, with balanced efforts and 6-7 tight rotations like they did in 06, like they're doing now, where those guys just kind of beat you with their quality and you're not so much concerned about depth. But now Cam kind of gives you that dynamism. He gives you that Kemba Walker, that Jimmer Fredette, that Steph Curry element of, man, this guy can take over a game at any time. And he did that against St. Bonaventure, especially in the second half. It was exciting to watch. It was electric to witness. And hopefully he can do it again against Michigan, which brings me to the opportunity to start talking about Michigan. Tough matchup for LSU for very obvious reasons. Getting a 1 seed, this is where getting the 8 seed, and I think we saw after that first game LSU was absolutely underseeded. Makes it a little bit tougher. The benefit, I guess, here is that of all the 1 seeds, Michigan might be the most vulnerable. Isaiah Livers is out for them. He was a huge part of their success this year, a 6'7" swing guy that hit 43% from three. He's been out, I think, for the last 3 or 4 games. I don't remember the specificity of his injury, but he may be able to come back if they make a run. He won't be available for this game. And so that chops an already tight rotation down. They don't use many bench minutes at all. They're 314th in the country in bench minutes. So they're going to chop that rotation down a little bit. And Michigan struggled without him. They've struggled a little bit down the stretch here. And I say struggled as much as a 21-4 team can struggle. But they've lost 3 of their 4 losses have come since March started. They lost to Illinois, got blown out by Illinois. They lost to Michigan State, and then they lost to Ohio State in the conference tournament. And so they're struggling a little bit. And then I think you're also seeing the struggles of the Big Ten on display. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know you've seen a lot of Big Ten teams fall in the tournament already. Illinois is out. Ohio State's out. Rutgers went out. Purdue went out already. You're seeing the Big Ten struggle a little bit in the NCAA tournament. So I'm wondering if that's something that bodes well for LSU, regardless of how Michigan's playing, regardless of how LSU's playing even, and regardless of how the Big Ten is playing for sure. Still a very, very tough matchup for LSU, and I think it very obviously starts with Hunter Dickinson, Michigan's big man in the middle. He's number 8 in the Ken Pom Player of the Year rankings. His raw stats I don't think are mind-blowing. He's averaging like 15.7 rebounds, but he's doing it very efficiently. Everything that they do runs through him. Here's Will Wade talking about Hunter Dickinson, the matchup problems that he could pose for LSU, who does not have a 7'1", 255-pound guy like Hunter Dickinson to match up against Hunter Dickinson.
Hey, Will, it's Andrew Kahn with Ann Arbor News, Michigan. Yeah, for someone who hasn't seen your team play too much this year, I'm sure you're not going to give me the game plan, but can you speak to how, you see the matchup with Dickinson inside going, just given, his size and skill down there? Like, yeah.
Not well.
No one says it more succinctly than Will Wade. Dickinson is the straw that stirs the drink for Michigan. Despite his numbers not being audacious, I think if you look at his scoring games, the last few games, he hadn't scored 20 points since. I'm looking at it backwards. He scored 21 against Ohio State, but he had 16 against Texas Southern. He only had 6 against Maryland, 12 against Michigan State, 14 against Michigan State right before that, 6 against Illinois. Prior to that Ohio State loss, he hadn't scored 20 since February 21st against Ohio State. So he's not a volume scorer, but he is a guy that everything kind of goes through Michigan. You can kind of see that through some of his turnover numbers. He had 6 turnovers against Texas Southern. He had 6 against Michigan State on March 4th. So the offense runs through him, and it's going to be interesting to see how LSU tries to counteract that, because they don't necessarily have the 7'1" body, or certainly they don't have that body that's played a lot for them. When you look at Trenton Watford, Darius Days, both of those guys are 6'8", 6'7". That's LSU's go-to bigs, and they haven't really played a whole lot of bigs off the bench other than Josh LeBlanc, who is probably 6'7", 6'8" himself, but long-armed, but still not 7'1". There is maybe a wild card that LSU could play that we'll talk about in a second, but I think their game plan will focus first and foremost on trying to keep the ball out of the post.
We've got to somehow keep the ball out of the post, because when they get it in the post, not only do they have high quality scoring opportunities, they're going to get the offensive rebound, and then it's just a matter of whether they make it or we foul them, which way. And all 5 of their starters shoot 77+% from the free throw line. So they're all very, very good, very, very good free throw shooters. And so, we've got to find a way to keep that thing out of the post, keep them from getting deep position, and keep them from being able to maneuver down there in the restricted area.
The matchup that I go back to that I would compare it to is when LSU played Florida earlier in the year, and Colin Castleton just feasted against LSU. Only played 19 minutes, but had 21 points, 6 rebounds, got a bunch of stuff in the paint. And as Will said, when you get it in the paint, even if you miss it, you're either going to offensive rebound it, which Florida did 13 times, 43% of their possessions, way too high for LSU, or they're going to get fouled, which they did a bunch, and 20-23 from the free throw line. That's a recipe for disaster for LSU. So as he said, the first key is going to be keeping the ball out of the post, because what Michigan's going to do is they're going to run cross screen action for Castleton and not Castleton. Look there, I go Dickinson in the post, and they're going to feed it to him, and then he's going to play off of that. And he's either going to post it up and try to get something for himself, or kick it out and get the ball moving. They can also run some pick and roll action through Mike Smith, who's their point guard, who's exceptional, shooting 44% from 3 this year. I think right around 5 assists a game. His assist rate is high, his turnover rate is low. So he can kind of get in the paint and spray it out to their shooters. Franz Wagner hits 38% from 3. Smith hits 43% from 3. Brandon Johns hadn't shot a bunch of threes, but he's shot 41%. Chauncey Brown shoots 39%. Eli Brooks shoots 39%. I mean, they're dynamic from 3-point. They're 11th in the country, shooting 38.5% as a team. So they are a dribble penetration team through Mike Smith, but they're a penetration through the pass team through Dickinson first and foremost. And so you have to deny the post. And I'll be curious to see how Will Wade does that. There's a couple ways to keep the ball out of the post. One, you just provide elite ball pressure and don't let the ball get entered into the post by getting in the face of the guy you're guarding. And LSU can do that a little bit with their switching defense. They can exert a little bit of ball pressure. And if that guy's sitting there on the block, you're less susceptible to dribble penetration. So you can get out there and extend and deny the post that way a little bit. You can front the post, which I think LSU will probably try with Darius Days quite a bit, front the post, helping behind. Or you can feed it into the post and then double. And that may be the way that LSU goes. They've been exceptional at that this year, actually. They've been a really good doubling the post team and rotating behind it. Because they already switch everything on defense, they're very good in rotation behind the first pass, doubling and then rotating behind it. Of course, LSU is going to mix in some zone and some trap and some press and all that stuff, and I think you'll see a lot of that. Really, it's hard to play too much zone against a team that shoots it as well as Michigan, but LSU's matchup zone kind of combats that a little bit. But that's the ways that you can try to keep it out of the post, and I'll be curious to see how much LSU tries to double the post with Dickinson. The other wild card that LSU could go to, and I think they will go to based on what Darius Days hinted at in his press conference on Sunday, is playing Josh Gray. Josh Gray, I think you could call him the ultimate wild card. He's 6'11", 255. He's the body type you need. He played a minute against St. Bonaventure in junk time. He played 3 against Missouri, 1 against Vanderbilt. He hasn't played more than 8 minutes all season against Southeastern. He hasn't played more than 6 minutes since SEC play started. He did that against Mississippi State. He's only played in 10 games all year. This might be a game for Josh Gray. And I could absolutely see Josh Gray being a March darling because of his personality, because of the way he plays, the high-energy way he plays. I think he could introduce a real element of chaos into this game, block a shot, run down the other end, get a putback dunk, fist pump, start raising the roof, whatever goofy celebration he's going to do because he's kind of a goofy guy. The cameras start loving him. He gives you 8 to 10 minutes of 4 points, 5 rebounds, 3 fouls, right? I could just see him coming in and giving absolute chaos to this game in the attempt to neutralize not just Hunter Dickinson, but the other bigs that Michigan has, because Dickinson isn't the only one. They've got a couple guys that can go down there, and Johns can go down there. Austin Davis can go down there. He's 6'10", 250. I mean, even Wagner is 6'9", 220, not necessarily that kind of player. Terrence Williams is 6'7", 240. I mean, they've got big bodies that can go in there and play. Dickinson being the foremost of them. I could just see this being an opportunity for Josh Gray. I wouldn't have believed it. I'm telling you, I think we're all talking about it. I'm sure it's the message board chatter. I'm sure it's stuff that you've been talking about with your friends. Oh, maybe they'll play Josh Gray. I wouldn't have believed they would play Josh Gray. I'd say, no, they're going to stick to what they do. And then Darius Days, I think, may have tipped LSU's hand a little bit.
Definitely, it's going to be a very physical game. It's going to be really, really fun. They have big guys. We have me, Trenton, and Josh Gray. Josh Gray is going to, help us a lot tomorrow night. I hope he has a great game. Like as I said before, it's gonna be a very, very physical game. Dickinson is a part of big. He just like to lay on you, wedge you under. Get deep post position and do his work inside. So it's gonna be a real big challenge for us.
You heard it right. You heard the telltale sign. I mean, obviously it was Day saying me, Trenton, and Josh Gray, but it was the that he said after that. That that is the of somebody who said something they weren't supposed to say. I know that I have 2 children. I've used that before in many a conversation with my wife, at work, at home, wherever. That is, oh man, I just said something that I shouldn't have said. How do I transition out of it? And then Days went back to saying the same exact thing he said before. Textbook case of somebody giving away a secret. Now, in all seriousness, I don't think it's that big of a secret if Josh Gray plays or not. I think Michigan's probably got a game plan for if he comes in. I don't think they're going to game plan around him too much. So I don't know that Darius Days actually gave away that valuable of a secret. But Will Wade is typically one to play his hand a little bit closer to the vest regarding personnel, those kinds of decisions. And maybe Josh Gray doesn't play a minute, and maybe I've just wasted 5 minutes talking about him. I just have a feeling based on that and then also reading the tea leaves, reading the room, that Josh Gray has a role to play in this game against Michigan. So we'll see. I think he could be a guy that gives you this huge spark off the bench. I thought Aundre Hyatt did that in the first game because what I mean is, and he didn't come off the bench, by that spark, I mean when teammates see a guy that normally doesn't score or make a huge impact, it gets them going. It gets them excited, gets them fired up. And so I could see Josh Gray coming in and getting a block, getting a dunk, and just lighting the LSU bench on fire and giving them some real energy and juice. So fingers crossed, hopefully he does come in and make a big impact. I think Josh LeBlanc, who I mentioned earlier in his plus-minus over the last few games, really since LSU started playing well, I think he's got a huge role to play in this game. Should LSU have to combat some of those big guys inside, I think they're going to need Gray. I think they're going to need LeBlanc to play well. And then I think Javonte Smart is in for a big game. Javonte Smart doesn't typically score in single digits for LSU. I didn't think he played poorly against St. Bonaventure at all. I thought no turnovers was huge for him. It's his first no turnover game, maybe of the year. Yeah, I'm looking at the stats right now. This is the first game he hadn't turned the ball over all year, and it wasn't like he didn't have the ball in his hands. It just wasn't a game that required him to score a bunch. He got in foul trouble early. By the way, I thought Will Wade did a masterful job. I haven't mentioned this yet. A masterful job of handling LSU's rotation in the first half when Smart got that ridiculous technical foul. Don't even get me started on that. See Twitter for my explanation on that. And Trenton Watford got his second foul. Normally Will or any coach just sits those 2 guys. Well, that's not something that LSU can afford to sit 2 guys. Will did a great job of just rotating those guys in and out, getting Gaines in there, getting LeBlanc in there in spots, staggering their minutes with Smart and Watford to make sure that both of those guys could play as many minutes as possible by the end of the game. Javonte had played 30 minutes. Trenton had played 31, so the foul trouble didn't affect him too much. Really good job by Will Wade of managing that. But I think Javonte's in for a big game. He normally, when he has a quieter game, he tends to explode in the next one. He had 2 against Texas A&M, went for 20 the next night against Florida, 6 against Kentucky, 19 against A&M, and then 29 against Texas Tech in the 2 games after that. So 10 against Ole Miss earlier in the SEC tournament, 19 the next game, 21 the next game against Alabama. He's the kind of guy that doesn't stay down for long. And as well as he shot it this year, 41% from 3, I think his 3-point shooting is going to be huge against Michigan. We focus a lot on Michigan's offense and running through Dickinson and then all the shooters around them. They're also elite defensively. They're number 6 in the country in defensive efficiency, number 1 in the Big Ten in conference play. They slow you down on defense. They grind you out. They contest everything. They don't force a bunch of turnovers, which is the one area of their defense that isn't excellent. But everywhere else, and obviously they don't get a lot of steals in that regard, but they force teams to shoot a lot of threes. They contest. They don't allow teams to shoot a lot of threes. They make you put it on the floor. They don't let you get a lot of assists. But the thing is, that kind of plays into what LSU does. LSU doesn't get a lot of assists. They aren't a ball movement team. They're a pick and roll team, and so I'm curious to see how that fares against Michigan. But I think the way that Michigan shoots from three, LSU is going to have to be very, very sharp from three, and Smart's going to be a huge part of that. I think he's in for a big game. So I'll leave it there. It's 9:40 right now. I'll try to get this thing posted in the next 5 minutes, which is irrelevant to you because you're already listening. And in fact, you're done listening. Thank you for listening. But I'm going to have it up, and I know it's short before the game, and normally I try to give a little bit of headway, but look, it's March, and it's time to celebrate and lean into March. And hopefully this isn't the last episode of the season. Hopefully I'm coming back after LSU knocks off Michigan, and we're looking at the rest of the bracket, and maybe LSU's getting prepared for a big game against Colorado or Florida State. Florida State beat UNC Greensboro. I haven't checked that part of the bracket yet. My bracket's a disaster. I threw it away. But hopefully LSU's gearing up for a big Sweet 16 game, a winnable Sweet 16 game, and then maybe an Elite Eight matchup against Alabama. Could that be in the cards? Texas is gone. They're not in the mix anymore. Who knows? Maybe LSU and Alabama are set for one more date with Destiny in the Elite Eight. But got to get past Michigan first, a very good Michigan team, and 6:10 tip-off. Can't wait to watch it. So thanks for listening, and hopefully we'll see you on the next episode of Boot Up, the LSU Basketball Podcast.
Now a visit to Kent's Corner, the sports information director for LSU basketball, Kent Lowe, with Shaq wearing Kent's glasses. And we're using this as a big thank you not only to Kent, but to everyone, all of the sports information directors and their hard work all year long, all of the years, but especially this one. So good luck and good bowling, Kent Lowe.